Welcome back to Mystery Minds, the channel where we dive into the darkest corners of true crime, uncovering stories that shock, intrigue, and leave us questioning the world around us. In today's case, we uncover a sinister web of corruption, influence, and hidden power. It's a story that connects two unlikely worlds, the glamorous music industry and the shadowy underbelly of organized crime. This is the story of the Mafia and the music industry, Payola and power. How did the pursuit of fame and fortune collide with the Mafia's insatiable hunger for control? And what happens when music, money, and murder intersect? Stay with us as we unravel this riveting tale. It all began with a hit song and a missing DJ. When Johnny Rivera, a popular radio DJ in 1975, vanished on his way to the studio, whispers of foul play began to surface. But the truth, as investigators soon discovered, was far darker than anyone could have imagined. The music industry's glittering facade was hiding a dangerous secret, a secret that would expose the Mafia's chokehold on the very songs America was singing. Johnny Rivera was more than just a DJ, he was a kingmaker in the 1970s music scene. With a smooth voice and impeccable taste, Johnny's nightly radio show was a staple in millions of households. Artists prayed to land a spot on his coveted playlist, knowing that a single spin could catapult them to stardom. But on an October evening in 1975, Johnny Rivera didn't show up for his prime time slot. His absence was unusual. Johnny was known for his punctuality and professionalism. By the time his colleagues realized something was wrong, Johnny was already gone. Police found his car the next morning, abandoned in a parking lot not far from the station. The driver's door was slightly ajar, and his briefcase sat untouched on the passenger seat, filled with tapes and notes for the night's show. There was no sign of a struggle, but there was something eerily wrong. The air around the case grew heavier when detectives discovered that Johnny had been receiving threatening letters in the months leading up to his disappearance. The notes were vague yet menacing, warning him to play the right tracks or pay the price. Johnny had confided in a few close friends about the threats, but brushed them off as the work of disgruntled fans or industry rivals. He refused to let fear dictate his choices and maintained a firm stance on the songs he chose to air. His principles, however, may have been his undoing. As police delved deeper, they uncovered whispers of a Payola scheme, an illegal practice where record labels paid DJs under the table to promote certain songs. At the time, Payola was an open secret in the industry. But Johnny's case suggested that this scheme was darker and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The investigation took a chilling turn when one of Johnny's colleagues mentioned a heated argument he had overheard between Johnny and a man known only as Vinnie. The name meant little to most, but to those familiar with the city's underworld, it carried weight. Vinnie Palermo was a feared figure in New York, a mafia capo with a reputation for running ruthless and profitable operations. What baffled investigators was why someone like Vinnie would be interested in a radio DJ. The answer lay in the growing influence of music on popular culture and the Mafia's hunger for control. As the police dug into Johnny's professional life, they found that he had been approached multiple times by individuals offering large sums of cash to play specific songs. Johnny, who prided himself on his integrity, had refused every offer. His defiance made him a target. For someone like Vinnie Palermo, who was orchestrating a sophisticated Payola network, Johnny's resistance wasn't just inconvenient, it was a direct threat. The scope of Vinnie's operation became clearer as detectives uncovered connections between certain hit songs and suspicious financial transactions. Artists with no prior success were suddenly dominating the charts, while established talents struggled to gain airtime. The investigation revealed that Vinnie had tapped into the music industry's vulnerabilities, using his Mafia network to pressure record labels and DJs alike. Those who complied thrived, those who didn't face dire consequences. Johnny's disappearance sent shockwaves through the industry, prompting other DJs to come forward with their own stories of intimidation and coercion. One DJ admitted to receiving similar threats, but had complied out of fear. Another recalled being followed for days after refusing to meet with an anonymous benefactor. The pattern was unmistakable. Johnny had become a victim of a system designed to silence dissent and protect the Mafia's growing empire. Despite mounting evidence, there was no trace of Johnny himself. His disappearance left a void that was impossible to fill. Listeners mourned the loss of their favorite DJ, unaware of the larger forces at play. Behind the scenes, the case was unraveling a sinister web of corruption that extended far beyond the confines of the radio station. Every lead brought investigators closer to the truth, but also deeper into dangerous territory. As weeks turned into months, the question remained, what had happened to Johnny Rivera? And who else in the glittering world of music was caught in the Mafia's deadly grip? The answers would come, but they would reveal a conspiracy more shocking and far-reaching than anyone could have anticipated. Behind the flashing lights and glamorous facades of the 1970s music scene, the Mafia had found a lucrative new playground. Organized crime had always thrived on controlling businesses, gambling, loan sharking, construction, but now Vinnie Palermo, a calculating Mafia capo, saw an untapped opportunity in the growing music industry. To Vinnie, music wasn't just art, it was a commodity, one with the potential to generate millions. And the key to unlocking this fortune lay in controlling the airwaves. Radio was the lifeblood of the industry, and Vinnie understood that a hit song was worth more than any cash robbery or illegal gambling ring. But it wasn't the songs themselves that interested him, it was the power to decide which songs the world would hear. Vinnie and his crew realized that by infiltrating the Payola system, where radio DJs and producers accepted bribes to promote specific records, they could manipulate the entire industry to their advantage. It was a brilliant scheme, one that blurred the lines between legal marketing tactics and outright extortion. One of Vinnie's first targets was a promising young artist named Rita Malone. Rita was a rising star, a singer with raw talent and charisma who'd been struggling to break through. Her debut single, City Lights, seemed destined for obscurity until it mysteriously began climbing the charts overnight. Within weeks, it became the most requested song on major radio stations across the country, propelling Rita to fame. To the public, it seemed like a dream come true, but behind the scenes, her success was carefully orchestrated by Vinnie's network. Rita's producer had been approached by one of Vinnie's men, a slick, well-dressed business consultant who promised radio airplay in exchange for a generous cut of the profits. When the producer hesitated, a subtle threat followed, reminding him that refusal was not an option. The producer agreed, funneling cash payments through shadowy intermediaries, and Rita's song began receiving heavy rotation. To the outside world, she was a star on the rise. To Vinnie, she was a pawn, a tool to demonstrate his control over the industry. But Vinnie's operation didn't stop at promoting songs. He quickly moved to dominate the entire ecosystem. Record labels were forced to pay exorbitant fees to secure airtime for their artists, and rival DJs were intimidated into compliance. Some were given no choice but to accept bribes, while others who resisted found their careers mysteriously derailed. A few even disappeared altogether. Vinnie's crew didn't just use money to influence the industry, they used fear. Johnny Rivera, the popular DJ who had vanished weeks earlier, was one of the few who dared to defy Vinnie's demands. Investigators were beginning to connect Johnny's disappearance to other troubling incidents within the industry. There were stories of broken equipment at radio stations, unexplained fires in recording studios, and even sudden deaths among executives who had resisted Vinnie's terms. It became clear that Vinnie's network wasn't just about bribery, it was about total domination. Even as Vinnie tightened his grip on the music industry, his methods grew more audacious. He began using his newfound influence to manipulate public perception, making stars out of unknown artists who would then owe him loyalty and a significant portion of their earnings. These artists unknowingly became walking advertisements for Vinnie's power. Their fame, however, came at a cost. Contracts were rewritten, royalties vanished into shadowy accounts, and careers were controlled from behind the scenes. The scale of Vinnie's operation was staggering. Club Palermo, a high-end nightclub owned by Vinnie, served as his unofficial headquarters. To the untrained eye, it was a glamorous hotspot where celebrities mingled with socialites. But behind its velvet curtains and private rooms, deals were being made that would shape the future of the industry. The club became a hub for laundering Payola money, forging contracts, and issuing orders to those who dared to cross Vinnie. Despite his growing empire, Vinnie's control was not absolute. Rumors of his influence began to spread, attracting the attention of law enforcement. Investigators probing Johnny Rivera's disappearance were slowly piecing together the larger picture, uncovering connections between suspicious chart-topping hits and Mafia-backed artists. The deeper they dug, the more they realized that Johnny had been right to resist. What started as a missing persons case was becoming something much larger, an expose of the Mafia's iron grip on an industry that prided itself on creativity and freedom. Yet, for all their discoveries, the authorities were still no closer to stopping Vinnie. The question wasn't just how far his influence stretched, but how far he was willing to go to protect it. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Harold Green, a washed-up music producer with a reputation for chasing fame through questionable means, walked into an FBI field office one rainy afternoon. Harold was a relic of the industry's earlier days, a man who had once worked with top artists but had burned too many bridges. Now he was desperate, claiming he had information that could bring down a dangerous operation. Harold admitted that he had been a small cog in a much larger machine, taking bribes and helping to funnel Payola money through dummy companies. For years, he had kept his head down, collecting his cut and ignoring the bigger picture. But something had changed. Harold explained that he had seen something he wasn't supposed to, something that made him fear for his life. On the night of Johnny Rivera's disappearance, Harold had been at a warehouse tied to Vinnie Palermo's operation. He had heard muffled shouting and seen two of Vinnie's enforcers dragging Johnny into the building. Harold left before he could be noticed, but the image of Johnny's terrified face had haunted him ever since. The FBI agents listening to Harold were skeptical at first, but his information lined up with other pieces of the puzzle they had been trying to assemble. Harold also provided details about how Vinnie's network operated, describing how payoffs were disguised as consulting fees, promotional expenses, and even donations to bogus charities. He explained how Club Palermo wasn't just a nightclub, it was the nerve center of Vinnie's empire. With Harold's testimony, the FBI began surveilling the club, which was a glittering hub of activity every night. Celebrities, record executives, and musicians came and went, unaware that federal agents were watching from the shadows. Harold had mentioned hidden rooms in the club, used to store cash and keep incriminating records. The FBI's challenge was finding a way to gain access without tipping off Vinnie's crew. As the investigation continued, more stories began to surface about the lengths to which Vinnie's network would go to maintain control. Radio DJs who had resisted Payola found their careers ruined by smear campaigns. One station owner reported finding his building vandalized after refusing to air a Mafia-backed artist. In another case, a producer's car was rigged to explode, though he narrowly escaped injury. The pattern was unmistakable. Vinnie wasn't just running a racket, he was enforcing his rule through fear and violence. One of the most damning pieces of evidence came from an unexpected ally, Rita Malone. The young starlet, whose career had been orchestrated by Vinnie's Payola scheme, had grown increasingly disillusioned. Her fame, while dazzling, felt hollow. She knew that her success wasn't entirely her own, and that she was indebted to a man who saw her as nothing more than a pawn. Rita had begun secretly documenting her interactions with Vinnie's associates, collecting evidence that could expose the truth. What neither Harold nor the FBI realized was how much danger Rita was in. As she gathered proof, Vinnie's men began to suspect that someone within their circle might be cooperating with law enforcement. Surveillance intensified, and whispers of betrayal reached Vinnie himself. Rita, however, pressed on, believing she could escape the Mafia's grip if she handed over enough evidence to the authorities. Meanwhile, the FBI continued to piece together the inner workings of Vinnie's operation. Harold's testimony revealed the existence of ledgers that detailed every transaction in the Payola scheme. These ledgers, hidden somewhere within Club Palermo, were the key to bringing down the entire network. But obtaining them would require a risky operation, one that would put both agents and informants in danger. As the net began to tighten around Vinnie, so too did the tension within his organization. Paranoia spread like wildfire, with associates accusing one another of betrayal. Vinnie, ever the strategist, doubled down on his efforts to maintain control, issuing orders to eliminate anyone he suspected of turning against him. The FBI knew they were running out of time. Harold's account had given them the roadmap, but Vinnie's ruthlessness meant that any delay could lead to more bloodshed. Rita, still gathering evidence, became a critical piece of the puzzle, though she had no idea how much danger she was in. The walls were closing in, but so too was the opportunity to dismantle a criminal empire. The case had grown far beyond Johnny Rivera's disappearance. What began as a search for one man had evolved into a battle to expose the Mafia's stranglehold on an industry that shaped the culture of a generation. For all their progress, the FBI still faced a harrowing question. Could they stop Vinnie before he silenced everyone who dared to stand in his way? For Rita, it wasn't just about escaping Vinnie's grip, it was about reclaiming her life and her career. But every step she took placed her in even greater danger. Rita's decision to betray Vinnie had been born out of frustration. At first, her success seemed like the culmination of her hard work and talent, but she soon learned the truth. Her producer had made a deal with Vinnie, and the price was steep. Rita was forced to hand over a portion of her royalties to the Mafia and agreed to perform at private events for Vinnie's associates without question. She felt like a puppet, with Vinnie pulling the strings. Any attempt to resist was met with subtle yet terrifying threats, silent phone calls in the middle of the night, strangers watching her at concerts, and even a cryptic note left in her dressing room. Her courage was fueled by a desire to free herself from Vinnie's control, but she knew the risks. Vinnie had a reputation for eliminating anyone who posed a threat to his empire. Rita had seen firsthand how quickly people disappeared when they crossed him. She couldn't afford a single mistake. Her fears were realized one evening when her manager's car exploded outside a recording studio. Investigators initially believed it was a tragic accident, but Rita knew better. The car had been rigged to send a message, a warning to her. The manager had been standing in the wrong place at the wrong time, and Rita was certain the bomb had been meant for her. The realization sent chills down her spine, but it didn't deter her. If anything, it strengthened her resolve to expose Vinnie once and for all. Unaware of Rita's efforts, the FBI continued to close in on Vinnie's operation. Harold Green's testimony had been invaluable, but it was still circumstantial. The agents needed hard evidence, ledgers, recordings, anything that could directly link Vinnie to the Payola scheme. They were working under immense pressure, knowing that Vinnie was growing increasingly paranoid. His organization was on high alert, and anyone suspected of disloyalty was swiftly dealt with. The tension reached a breaking point when Vinnie himself discovered that someone within his circle had been leaking information. His suspicions were vague, but he ordered his enforcers to find the traitor. Rita, though cautious, was not immune to the growing scrutiny. One of Vinnie's men began tailing her, and she noticed her phone line had been tapped. Her every move was being watched, and it was only a matter of time before she was caught. Desperate, Rita contacted the FBI through a trusted intermediary. She handed over the evidence she had gathered, including recordings of conversations where Vinnie's men openly discussed bribes, threats, and the use of violence to enforce compliance. The recordings were damning, providing the agents with the concrete proof they needed. But Rita's involvement came at a cost. By revealing herself as a whistleblower, she became the Mafia's primary target. The FBI immediately placed her under protective custody, but even that didn't guarantee her safety. Vinnie had eyes and ears everywhere, and the agents knew that any slip-up could cost Rita her life. Meanwhile, the evidence she provided was the final piece of the puzzle, allowing the FBI to plan a full-scale operation to bring down Vinnie's empire. As the agents prepared to raid Club Palermo, tensions reached a fever pitch. Vinnie, unaware of how close the FBI was, tightened his grip on his associates, issuing orders to eliminate anyone he suspected of betraying him. His paranoia made him even more dangerous, and the agents knew they were running out of time. The stakes couldn't have been higher. For Rita, the waiting was unbearable. She had risked everything to expose Vinnie, and now her fate rested in the hands of the FBI. The club, the ledgers, and Vinnie himself were all within reach, but one wrong move could unravel the entire operation. The stage was set for a final confrontation, one that would determine whether justice would prevail or if Vinnie's reign of terror would continue unchecked. His raid on Club Palermo was a culmination of months of investigation, risk, and sacrifice. On a cold December night, FBI agents surrounded the nightclub, waiting for the signal to move in. The operation was meticulously planned. Any mistake could allow Vinnie Palermo to escape or destroy the evidence that was critical to dismantling his criminal empire. Inside, the club was buzzing with its usual crowd of celebrities, record executives, and socialites, all oblivious to the storm about to break. Hidden behind the glitz and glamour were the secrets that could bring everything crashing down. As agents prepared to breach the club, Rita Malone remained under protective custody in a safe house. She had handed over everything she had: recordings, documents, and detailed accounts of her interactions with Vinnie's men. But even with federal protection, she wasn't safe. Vinnie's network was vast and his associates were relentless. That very night, 2 men were spotted lurking near the safe house, forcing the agents to move her to an undisclosed location. Rita knew that if the operation failed, she would never be able to return to her life. Her testimony had made her a permanent target. At Club Palermo, the FBI executed their plan with precision. Agents entered through multiple points, catching Vinnie and his crew off guard. In the chaos, patrons screamed and scrambled for the exits, unaware of the true nature of the raid. Vinnie's closest associates attempted to destroy records and flush cash, but they were too late. Hidden rooms, just as Harold Green had described, were uncovered, containing stacks of money, ledgers detailing the Payola scheme, and incriminating documents linking Vinnie to acts of extortion and violence. Vinnie, ever the strategist, tried to maintain his composure. He feigned ignorance, insisting he was just a businessman running a nightclub. But the evidence told a different story. Agents uncovered hidden compartments in his office containing not only financial records, but also a detailed list of individuals who had been targeted or coerced by his operation. The ledgers were the smoking gun, meticulously documenting the bribes paid to DJs, the record labels that had funneled money through Vinnie, and even the names of artists whose careers had been fabricated by the Mafia's influence. As Vinnie was handcuffed and led out of the club, he finally showed a crack in his armor. His calm demeanor gave way to anger, realizing that his empire was crumbling. Outside, reporters swarmed the scene, capturing the moment that signaled the fall of one of the most powerful figures in the music industry's shadowy underworld. Vinnie's arrest wasn't just the end of his operation, it was a public spectacle that revealed the depths of corruption in an industry thought to be built on talent and creativity. The fallout from the raid was swift and far-reaching. Record labels scrambled to distance themselves from Vinnie's network, but the ledgers implicated several high-ranking executives. Arrests followed, and careers were destroyed as the investigation expanded. DJs who had accepted bribes came forward in exchange for leniency, painting a clearer picture of how Vinnie's Payola empire had manipulated the music charts for years. For Rita Malone, the end of Vinnie's reign was bittersweet. While she was relieved to see justice served, her life would never be the same. She had sacrificed her career and safety to expose the truth, and though she was hailed as a hero by some, others in the industry viewed her as a liability. Offers for new music contracts dried up, and Rita was forced to rebuild her life away from the spotlight. Despite this, she remained resolute, knowing her actions had helped to dismantle a system that had victimized countless others. Johnny Rivera's disappearance, the case that had sparked the investigation, was finally solved. In the weeks following the raid, authorities uncovered remains at a property linked to Vinnie's crew. DNA testing confirmed that the remains belonged to Johnny. He had been silenced for refusing to comply, a tragic reminder of the price some paid for standing up to corruption. Vinnie Palermo faced a lengthy trial, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. Testimony from Harold Green, Rita Malone, and others sealed his fate. He was convicted on multiple charges, including racketeering, extortion, and conspiracy to commit murder, and sentenced to life in prison. His downfall sent shockwaves through the Mafia, signaling that even the most untouchable figures could be brought to justice. The case left an indelible mark on the music industry. New regulations were introduced to combat Payola, and a wave of transparency initiatives followed. While corruption couldn't be eradicated entirely, the fall of Vinnie Palermo served as a warning to those who thought they could manipulate the system unchecked. The legacy of his operation was one of greed, control, and violence, but also of resilience and the power of those willing to fight back. In the end, the story of Vinnie Palermo was more than just a tale of crime and punishment. It was a stark reminder of how easily power could corrupt and how even the brightest lights of an industry could cast the darkest shadows. The Mafia's influence on the music industry may have ended, but their legacy serves as a chilling reminder of the lengths some will go to for power. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the dark side of fame and fortune. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories that uncover the secrets hidden in plain sight. This is Mystery Minds, and we'll see you next time.